What's up, guys? This is the ultimate guide to how to optimally use the growth hormone secretagogues, created by yours truly, Elijah Smith, for use in the Pep and Pump Palace by the school community members, all of you folks. So hopefully you enjoy this. Hopefully you get something out of it. Let's get right to it. So before we can discuss anything, let's go over the medical and other disclaimers that this is all for research purposes only, not intended to be medical advice. You should always consult with a doctor before starting any treatment. And also, for background information on any of the compounds or peptides that I discuss in this video, I have a write-up posted in the classroom section that provides a lot of background information on these. So if you would like to see that, the science and stuff behind them and how they work, go read that beforehand and then come back here and watch this on how to use them. So why should you care about what we're going to talk about here? Because if you're going to use the growth hormone secretagogues in your research, or multiple of them, then there's some things you got to know, because if you don't apply the right nuances, there's a lot of nuances in how to use them that if they're not applied, they're pretty much useless and their effects are basically nullified if you don't do everything right. So that's what we're going to be going over. And there's also some supplements and best practices you can implement to either boost the results of them, the benefits from them, and also mitigate some of the side effects that they can cause. So there's a few things that are important to consider before you make the choice of what growth hormone secretagogues you're going to use and how you're going to use them. So firstly, the specific growth hormone secretagogue or secretagogues that you choose should be based on your goals, your schedule, your preferences, and because there's variation in the effects between the different ones, the side effect profiles, how frequently you're going to need to dose them, the timing that you're going to want to dose them, and the way they act. So there's two classes that we talked about before. I'll get into that in a little bit, but that's the first thing, is tailor your choices to your specific goals. So you need to know what your specific goals are beforehand. Then there's many options, so I know it can be a little confusing about which ones you're going to want to pick. So we're going to outline the unique characteristics of each one and which applications they'll be best for. And as I just said in the previous segment that I posted in the classroom, it's a write-up. I discussed how they fall into GHRHs and GHRPs. And the ones that are placed into the GHRH category is because they mimic that GHRH receptor. And the GHRPs, they mimic ghrelin. So two categories of growth hormone secretagogues. And the next point here is that to get the largest increase in growth hormone levels, you're going to want to pair one GHRH with one GHRP. And they'll work synergistically because their end goal, the result of them, is the same, but it's through different pathways. So they work together to get a higher growth hormone level than either one would be individually. And this image on the bottom right here shows you that the gray line at the bottom here, I'll do this. Oh, that's not it. This? Okay, this gray line here, that's your body's natural growth hormone. Then the GHRH is going to increase the frequency of that, so you're getting more pulses more frequently. The GHRP, they call it GHRSR in this, it's same thing, GHRP. That just increases the amplitude of the pulses. So both of them will give you more growth hormone, but then when you pair them, you get higher peaks also more frequently, so you get the most possible growth hormone increase. Now on to selecting the correct single or pair of growth hormone secretagogues for you. So this is the list of the commonly used growth hormone releasing hormones, GHRHs. So first you have CJC1295 with DAC, which DAC just stands for drug affinity complex. And the drug affinity complex just makes it bind to albumin in your blood and extends the half-life for up to 6 to 8 days. So it's a much longer acting growth hormone releasing hormone. So that means that you're only going to need to dose it once, maybe twice per week, and then it'll be active in your system that whole period. 6 to 8 days. So it maintains pulsatility, but the trough levels, which means when it peaks and then comes down and you're at the bottom, the trough, that is what's elevated. So you get a higher average growth hormone over the week. And then you move on to CJC 1295 without DAC, which is also known as mod GRF 1-29, 1 to 29. That's the amino acid sequence that it is. This is a much shorter half-life, so it's 30 minutes-ish, give or take, around that, depending on the person, because the response is going to be different. But so that makes it better for precisely timing the dose, like say taking it right before you go to bed. So your biggest pulse of growth hormone, you could time it up right before that to boost that biggest growth hormone spike that you get when you're sleeping. So the dosages are at the bottom here. You can read them all. Just 1 to 2 milligrams once, twice per week for with DAC, 100 to 300 micrograms every day. I say 1 to 3 times throughout the day because you can do it up to 3 times in the day. Some people just like to do it once before bed to boost that big spike when you sleep, or fast in the morning and at night, or post-workout, pre-workout, up to 3 times per day. And then tesamorelin. This is my favorite GHRH, and because it's probably the strongest increase in growth hormone with still having a good safety profile and minimal side effects. It's also suitable for long-term use because it's approved by the FDA for reducing visceral fat in HIV patients. And visceral fat is the fat that accumulates around your internal organs, which is really unhealthy and dangerous. So it's FDA approved for that, and they've had people run it for over a year. And the dosage for that is 0.5 milligram to 2 milligrams per day. Again, you can take it up to 3 times throughout the day. A lot of people just do 2 milligrams at night or 1 milligram at night, 1 milligram morning, 1 milligram night. And then finally, sermorelin. This one was FDA approved, but has since been discontinued in its approval. They rescinded the FDA approval of it. It's the oldest of the GHRHs, and I think it's kind of outdated and irrelevant, personally. But it'll give you a mild elevation of growth hormone levels. So for those of you who are just looking for maybe some moderate anti-aging benefits of growth hormone, it could be a good choice for you. But I do think there are other better choices. And the dosage for that is typically 250 to 500 micrograms up to 3 times per day. So now on to selecting the right GHRP for your scenario. This is where the more nuanced, like what your situation is going to come into play, because a lot of these have different side effect profiles and features of them. Like MK677 or ibutamoren, as it's named, is the only oral option. So for those of you who are really against injecting, MK677, that's your only option. It also has a long half-life of about a day, so you only need to take it once per day. That can be attractive to some people as well. The only thing is that it's well known to increase appetite. These are ghrelin agonists, so most of them will increase appetite. This one typically comes with significant water retention, and it does have a possibility of increasing cortisol and prolactin, which is not ideal. The dosage for that, typically 10 to 30 milligrams once per day, orally, before bed. Then you move on to the GHRPs. There's GHRP2 and GHRP6. They're both known to increase hunger pretty significantly. I believe GHRP6 has the most significant hunger increase, which makes these not great options for those of you who are trying to lose weight or diet. These are probably not the ideal choices for you. So these two also can increase cortisol and prolactin, and they have a little more risk of desensitizing the receptors than some of the other options. They also have a little bit more of a side effect profile, like the possibility of causing gynecomastia through the increase of prolactin, but they are typically cheaper than some of the other options. And the dosages for that is 100 to 300 micrograms up to 3 times a day, and 100 to 200 micrograms up to 3 times a day for GHRP6. Then that brings us to hexarelin, which is known to be the strongest GHRP. And it does have some cardioprotective effects on the heart, which is nice, but it has a notable increase in cortisol and prolactin, especially if you're using it for longer than a few weeks. So that's not ideal. Also, it increases appetite and hunger reportedly, not as significantly or notably as the GHRPs, GHRP 2 and 6, but it does have an increase in appetite. And prolonged use shows receptor desensitization. This one also can cause gynecomastia because of the potent increase in prolactin that it can show. And the dosage of this is typically 100 to 150 micrograms up to 3 times a day. Finally, that brings us to ipamorelin or ipamorelin. That is my preferred GHRP that I would recommend for most people. The reason for that is because it's the newest and the most selective GHRP. It's got minimal to zero impact on appetite, no impact on prolactin or cortisol, which is great. And it has the most favorable side effect profile. Pretty much most people get hardly any side effects from this. It's a bit milder than some of these other choices, so it's not technically as potent or strong, but combined with the GHRH, I think it's plenty strong. So this is my suggested choice for most cases. And the dosage for that is 100 to 300 micrograms up to 3 times a day. So I may have just confused you even more right there. So what do I choose? What's the best option? For most people, I think tesamorelin and ipamorelin is going to be the ideal choice. I think those two have a strong effect on growth hormone increasing and also maintain a favorable side effect profile. So taking those together 1 to 2 times a day, either all of that at night before bed or split into a even one nightly dose and one fasted morning dose, I think that would be an ideal pair because synergistically those two are going to work together to provide a stronger growth hormone increase and maintain favorable side effect profiles. So they both have relatively short half-lives. Tesamorelin's around 2 hours, ipamorelin's around 30 minutes. So you can time them very precisely to follow the big major pulses that your body's going to naturally do. If fat loss is your main goal, then this is also a great pair for that. Tesamorelin's great for fat loss specifically. And splitting it into 2 doses if fat loss is your main goal is going to be ideal because then you can do one in the morning followed with fasted exercise, which will leverage the lipolysis effects, which is just freeing up stored fat. And so then when you do exercise after growth hormone has freed up the stored fat, you'll burn it off more than you would without it. So taking 1 dose fasted in the morning and then exercising, and then 1 dose right before bed would be the optimal approach for fat loss. So as I mentioned on the last slide, the dosages are for tesamorelin, it's 0.5 milligram to 2 milligrams per day, ipamorelin 100 to 300 micrograms per day. So one reason this might not be an ideal choice for some people is that tesamorelin is by far the most expensive option. And so if your budget's a little tighter or you don't like to frequently inject, the other options might be better for you. So that brings us to the lazy man stack. This is MK677 and CJC1295 with DAC. So I call it the lazy man stack because these are the ones you have to dose the least frequently and you don't have to inject them. Or you don't have to inject MK677. You have to inject CJC1295 with DAC, but you only have to do it once, maybe twice a week. So MK677 is going to be a convenient oral once daily before bed dose. And so for those of you who are really not into the injecting thing and you're okay with some water retention and maybe some appetite increase, MK677 could be good for you. And then CJC1295 with DAC, the long half-life of it, 6 to 8 days, means once a week injection is plenty. So you'd only have to inject yourself once a week. So that's why I'm going to call this one the lazy man stack. Might be the right call if that describes you. That sounds like you. So continuing, which one is right for you? What choice? What pair? If you're someone who is just looking for the biggest increase in growth hormone possible, you don't really mind that there's some additional risk of more side effects, then a combination of either tesamorelin and CJC1295 with DAC, and then hexarelin as the GHRP might be the combo for you, because that's probably going to be the strongest combination. And then also, if you're someone who struggles to eat enough calories and you're intentionally wanting to stimulate more appetite, then either GHRP6 or MK677 could be the GHRP that's right for you, because those are notably going to increase appetite for most people. And then overall, the big overarching thing I want you to take from this is that a combination of a GHRP and a GHRH is going to work together to give you the most growth hormone. So a pair of one GHRP and one GHRH is going to be the best choice. So depending on the characteristics we just talked about, which one you select is going to be different from person to person, but some pair of those two is going to be optimal. Now this part is very important, because this is what I was talking about when I say that if you don't implement the right practices, they can be useless. This right here is what can make them useless. So the growth hormone secretagogues must be taken in a fasted state, the short-acting ones specifically. So like tesamorelin and ipamorelin, if you dose those, it needs to be in a fasted state. Otherwise, the effects are blunted and almost completely wasted. So you're just throwing money out the window. And what I mean by fasted is that don't drink any calories, don't eat any calories other than water or 0-calorie drinks or something. No calories intake for 2 to 3 hours before and around an hour after. Some people say 30 minutes is fine because of the 30-minute half-life, but I think an hour is on the safer side. So nothing for 2 to 3 hours before other than water, and then nothing for an hour after. The reason that you have to be fasted is because when you consume calories, our body is secreting insulin and somatostatin in response to consuming meals and food and calories, both of which directly stop and limit growth hormone secretion. So having an insulin response and somatostatin in your system is going to completely reduce the effect of these. And okay, ghrelin and GHRH are the two receptors that these act on, and those are the two stimulatory growth hormone secretion hormones and modulators. So those two we want high. We want high levels of ghrelin and high levels of GHRH to get the most growth hormone. And so when you haven't eaten recently, ghrelin is the highest because that's our body's hunger hormone. So when you haven't eaten for a while, ghrelin's high, and that's going to stimulate more secretion of more growth hormone. And then consuming food causes a blood sugar release into your bloodstream, and blood sugar lowers the level of GHRHs. So when blood sugar is low, GHRH is high. So we want minimal blood sugar levels for optimal growth hormone secretion. So being fasted is extremely important for this. So now, these are just the additional, more natural supplements and best practices you can implement to get the most out of your growth hormone secretagogues. So high intensity cardio and resistance training is shown to increase growth hormone secretion, even up to 24 hours after the high intensity exercise and resistance training. Also, taking creatine monohydrate, or I think HCl is probably fine as well, but creatine monohydrate for sure, taurine and caffeine pre-workout also increase the growth hormone output. And cortisol, the stress hormone, so high cortisol blunts growth hormone secretion. So lowering your cortisol levels will increase your growth hormone levels. So supplementing with something that reduces cortisol like ashwagandha root extract will help you further increase the growth hormone secretion. And then things like ornithine, lysine, and arginine, these work synergistically to blunt somatostatin, which I was just talking about, how that's the direct opposer of growth hormone secretion. So blunting that will also give you more growth hormone secretion. Melatonin is also a potent growth hormone secretagogue. So melatonin before bed will produce more growth hormone for you in that big pulse when you're asleep, the biggest one that we have every day. Melatonin before bed will give you the most out of that. And then this is really important for mitigating the water retention side effects of these. Having proper electrolyte balance and if you do notice some water retention, supplementing with taurine 5 grams. It says 1 to 10 grams is good, but I found 5 grams is pretty good, pretty sufficient to reduce water retention and other side effects from the growth hormone secretagogues. So these are just things you can implement to fully optimize the process. And here are the main takeaways that I think are the most important things for you to remember from this long video, because I know it's going to be over 20 minutes or something, so it's easy to forget stuff. So these are the key takeaways that I think are the most important. The selection of your GHRP and GHRH, or just one or the other, if that's your thing, should be tailored to your specific goals. So factor in those unique characteristics that we talked about while you make your selection. So like things like your fat, if fat loss is your goal, factor that in. If your lifestyle doesn't allow you to inject multiple times a day or every day, factor that in. Your preferences, your comfortability with injecting and all, the frequency of dosing that you can tolerate, all that stuff should go into your selection. And then the next most important thing is that overarching thing that I keep stressing, that one GHRH and one GHRP will be the synergistic pair to give you the most growth hormone. And my personal preference for a pair of the two is testosterone and ipamorelin for most people. The next thing, you must be fasted for these. No food or drink other than water or 0-calorie beverages 2 to 3 hours before and an hour after. Some of the other GHRPs can be the optimal choice for specific use cases, like if you're intentionally trying to increase your appetite to gain weight or bulk up. And there's also additional supplements and lifestyle habits you can implement to fully optimize it that we just talked about. So those, I think, would be the most important takeaways from this long breakdown. Here are all the sources and citations for the PubMed articles that I reviewed while making this. That's the reason it took me so long, guys. I'm sorry. And also the source for the image that I went over in one of the slides. So a lot of people were thinking that I was ChatGPTing this, but I was not. And that's why it took me forever. But I hope this was helpful, and I hope you guys now feel like you know how to use the growth hormone secretagogues better. So thank you all for watching. I hope that was helpful, and if you guys have any further questions or content you want to see, leave it in the discussion page or message me in the DMs, anything. I will make whatever you guys want. This community is for you. So have a good day, night, wherever you are. Love you guys.